this is about the World Economic Forum, and there was a conversation between Bree and Robbie on Rising about this particular event and its connection to the conflict in Ukraine. Now, before we get into that clip, I want you to see the list of attendees for the World Economic Forum, because some of the people on this list may surprise you. They're not all big shots, as some may think. But this is the actual list of public figures. Now, for fun here, I'm going to go down to the United States because I want you to see what's happening here. All right. Sorry, it's a long list. You can't tell, it's a long list. So yes, the World Economic Forum is taking place in Switzerland. You may have heard people talk about it a little bit already, but I want to show you some of the people that are on the list from the United States. So we have John Kerry. He's one of the attendees. I'm gonna go down to some other ones. Marty Walsh. So Marty Walsh was my former mayor of Boston. He's there. He's the Secretary of Labor. These are the people I want you to pay attention to. Look at who's here. Okay. You have Christopher Wray, who's the director of the FBI. He's there. Why is he there? Come on, guys, let's think about this. We need to start asking these questions. Why is the director of the FBI at the World Economic Forum? All right. Chris Coons from Delaware, the senator from Delaware, he also voted against $15 minimum wage. There's certain things I want to point out here. Let's go down to Gretchen Whitmer. That's the governor of Michigan. She was there. Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are both at the World Economic Forum. Of course, again, against the $15 minimum wage. I'm trying to make a connection here to show you guys. There are certain people, certain Democrats they send there, right? Let's go down. There was another one I wanted to point out to you as well. Whoops, I skipped, sorry. You can look at the international ones as well, but there were certain ones that I wanted to point out from the United States. I think I may have passed it already. Sorry about that. I think I did. Oh, where did it go? Oh, of course, Tony Blair is there from the UK. But the other one was, right here. Avril Haines, the U.S. Director of National Intelligence. That's another one I wanted to point out to you. So those are just some of the attendees that are there. And you guys, if you've seen me cover these events before, you know how I feel about these events. Now, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, there's a clip of them here. I want you to pay attention to what happens at the end of Kyrsten Sinema's statement, because like I said, both of them were also invited. Now, Kyrsten Sinema, again, she's out here backing hedge fund managers. She left the Democratic Party, no shade in that game, to become an independent. But Kyrsten Sinema is not really trying to fight for people at all, or really pretty much vote for anything that's going to help the American people. She's very much corporate now. This is someone who started off as pretty much as progressive as you could get. She was a Green Party candidate. She was a Green Party member. Then she made her way into the Democratic Party and she changed. But she is very corporate. And I want to mention her name, and I'll continue to mention her name for a reason, because Kyrsten Sinema was also one of the attendees at the Bilderberg meeting last year. Out of all the people in the Senate, how is it that she got to go to an event like that, where she is sitting at the same table, sharing words with the CEO of Shell? Think about that. Very much an elite event. World Economic Forum, these are the people who are deciding how things are supposed to work. And it is very troubling that you have the FBI there. Very troubling. But what's even more troubling is what you're going to see in this clip. Now, shout out to Case Study QB, because this is just another example of Kyrsten Sinema, Joe Manchin, and all the rest of them sitting around this table, not this table, but on this panel, that they're not really trying to do anything for the working people. Watch this.
Let me say about the current president of the United States, he has gotten things done. Now, he has worked with some reluctant members of his own party. He's worked with some reluctant members of the opposite party, but we have gotten things done for the United States at the federal level under this president.
And so while some would say that there were reluctant folks working in Congress in the last 2 years, I would actually say that that was the basis for the productivity for some incredible achievements that made a difference for the American people in the last 2 years.
And we still don't agree on getting rid of the filibuster.
First of all, the things that Kyrsten Sinema agreed on for the people did not do as much as she's saying it did. And she voted against a lot of those things that would actually help out the people. And also, why is she wearing a rug? Why is she wearing this looks like one of those little throw rugs. What is this? I don't know. What is it? What is it? So listen to what Joe Manchin is going to say in response to her. This is the part that's really troubling.
For some incredible achievements that made a difference for the American people in the last 2 years.
And we still don't agree on getting rid of the filibuster.
That's correct.
And they high-fived at that. They high-fived there at the end. He said, we still don't agree on getting rid of the filibuster. And they gave each other high fives. These are the kind of people sitting at the table at the World Economic Forum. See how this works? Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Now, Bree and Robbie had a discussion about this on Rising, about one of the topics that they are discussing at the World Economic Forum. And I think you really need to hear what's said here. Let me go ahead and grab that. Grab my screen here. You really need to hear this because I don't know, man. I don't know. Like for me, this is just going to show you what is to come. So let me share this here.
Just yesterday, a top advisor to President Zelensky resigned after claiming that Ukrainian counterstrikes were responsible for an apartment bombing that killed 44 civilians last weekend. In a social media post, the official later described his statement as erroneous and a serious mistake.
Meanwhile, CNN appears to have admitted the quiet part out loud while reporting on the conflict in Eastern Europe. In a Monday article titled "How Ukraine Became a Test Bed for Western Weapons and Battlefield Innovation," one source familiar with Western intelligence tells CNN, quote, "Ukraine is absolutely a weapons lab in every sense because none of this equipment has ever actually been used in a war between two industrially developed nations. This is a real-world battle test." Here at home, Republicans' temperature on U.S. intervention in the Russia-Ukraine war has hit new lows. A majority of GOP voters, 52% to 48%, want their member of Congress to oppose further Ukraine funding. Nonetheless, CNBC reports that across the pond over at the World Economic Forum in Davos this weekend, U.S. officials met privately with global allies and business leaders to rally around ongoing assistance to the war-torn nation.
So one of the topics that they discussed at the World Economic Forum was about Ukraine. Keep that in mind.
Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, who previously opposed Ukraine's admission into NATO, also revealed his change of heart at the WEF, noting, quote, "The idea of a neutral Ukraine under these conditions is no longer meaningful." The Prime Minister of Finland wasn't far behind, pressing the importance of supporting Ukraine as long as needed. Let's watch.
As long as needed.
Do you think if this war in Ukraine lasts 3, 4 years, 5 years, Europe has the staying power to see it through, to continue supporting Ukraine, deterring Russia, dealing with the energy issues that arise out of it?
I think the only message that we need to send that we will support Ukraine as long as needed.
Okay, so he just was asking her if it lasted 3 to 5 years. Let's hope that that doesn't happen. But if it lasted 3 to 5 years, Would you still support it? And she said, we will support them as long as possible. Now, guys, why is this connected with what I talked about earlier? I just showed you the strikes that are happening in the UK, the strikes that are happening in France, the protests that are happening in France because of the inflation, which is connected to the energy crisis, and the energy crisis in Europe is connected to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So if you have a country like the UK that has inflation, which last time I checked was at 14%, how are people going to be able to endure that for 3 to 5 more years? Guys, look at who is making the decisions. Look at the people in the room. Do you see this? They are making decisions that affect everyday people's lives, but it doesn't affect their lives. These people are paid. They're paid well enough that they can afford to deal with the inflation. The working class people and the poor people, especially over there in Europe, they can't afford to deal with it. Did you guys just hear what he just said? 3 to 5 more years. Can you do this for 3 to 5 more years? Can you guys continue to pay $9 for eggs at the grocery store 3 to 5 more years? Pay attention to what they're saying. And she says, as long as necessary, as long as needed. These are the people making the decisions that affect our lives. But we're not offered a seat at the table. This is very dangerous. And I hope more people are talking about this. This is terrible, terrible idea. Let's go on. There's more to be said here.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that people are willing to say that. I guess it shouldn't be so surprising to me. I guess from their perspective, the posture has to be that you maintain that stance, even if you don't feel that way internally or behind closed doors, because you don't want to give put out the public perception to Russia that if they just last a certain amount of time, that they can wear out the other side. But from a political perspective,
sorry, didn't mean to cut it. Yeah. That's exactly what neoconservatives would say about the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. That, well, we can't, if we say when we're going, then they'll just wait to.
Yeah, and we were in Afghanistan, you guys, what, 20 years? How'd that turn out? Like, you can't. I think people have this mindset of we can just ride this out, or that Ukraine can just wait this out. Are you kidding me? This guy said 3 to 5 years.
Fight bad, then they'll know there's a time limit on our commitment. And figures like John McCain, a sort of intellectual leader of the neoconservative wing of the Republican Party, said, well, yeah, if it's 100 years, it's 100 years.
Yeah.
Better the fight, their view was better the fight happening there, better all the destruction taking place in Iraq and Afghanistan than, the terrorists here at home. Of course, a lot of reason to think that maybe our involvement there is what inspires terrorists at home, et cetera. But it's very I think it's a very similar thinking.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how who is on what side has totally changed, because skepticism, at least eventually, not at first, but eventually was of Iraq and Afghanistan was there was a lot of that in the media, in progressive media, not at first when they supported it, but they did turn against it. But now that kind of progressive elite, the people at Davos, as long as it takes, totally committed to it. And it's those backward conservative Republicans back home in America asking too many questions about, well, how long is this going to go on? We think we've given a lot of money. Maybe there's an end date to that commitment.
Yeah, I think the fact that both establishment Republicans and Democrats at Davos have a more united pro-endless war message, despite there being a real populist anti-war movement back at home, really speaks to how this is an elite, non-elite, inside-outside game issue more so than it is a partisan one. Although I do want to give credit to the fact.
Did you guys hear what Bree just said? It is like this inside elite game. Like these are the people that you see right now that I mentioned that was on that list of attendees at the World Economic Forum. Those are the inside elites, guys. It boggles my mind that they get to make these decisions that affect us more than it will affect them, or it hurts us more than it would hurt them. It's crazy. Like literally when you think about it. And you have all these people that are struggling to pay for heat. They're struggling to pay their bills. It's affecting everybody. At least those, especially those that are working class and people who are poor. Max Fiend said this is not an accident. The CEO of Pilot/Flying J testified to the Surface Transportation Board last year that they were being forced to cut shipments by 50%. He was warning of the supply chain then.
Populist anti-war movement back at home really speaks to how this is an elite, non-elite, inside-outside game issue more so than it is a partisan one. Although I do want to give credit to the fact that there is this growing anti-war movement among non-politicos in the Republican Party, which in some ways seems to have more energy and enthusiasm behind it than the left war movement at this moment in history.
They held up Kevin McCarthy's coronation as Speaker of the House for the first time this was done against someone seeking to be Speaker of the House in 100 years over that.
Yeah, and those 20 holdouts, I think, would not have felt so empowered to do that if they didn't know that there was a significant amount of public support behind them, which of course is why so many progressives wanted the left to do the same thing 2 years ago, because the people are with them in all the issues they would have wanted the progressives to fight for. Nonetheless, back to this, it does seem to me, okay, even if I accept that they have to publicly pretend that they're in it with Ukraine as long as it takes, what concerns me is that there have been so many of these moments where the behind-door conversation seems to have been identical to the public conversation. And the fact that we're using Ukraine as a weapons lab, the fact that we have former Raytheon board members as, and Biden's cabinet advising the war effort.
That's what it's all about. It's all for profit. The fact that she just mentioned there, you have Raytheon board members a part of Biden's cabinet. We cannot have another Afghanistan. We cannot have that again. We cannot have another Iraq. Like, how long is this supposed to continue? Just terrible, terrible.
The fact that we have the revolving door, the fact that we have defense stocks skyrocketing, the fact that Biden is taking time out of his schedule to visit these weapons manufacturing plants down in the South, all of this points to the idea that there isn't an inside-outside game here. There isn't a public conversation versus a private conversation, and we can take solace in the fact that America really does know that it needs to end this war. It seems to me that there is one message, and that this isn't a bluff, that America really has a lot of financial incentives in prolonging this conflict, no matter what it means for the fate of the Ukrainians who are in the middle of this war.
America has a financial incentive to prolong the conflict. Same thing with Afghanistan, same thing with Iraq. But I'm just waiting. I'm waiting to see how many people, or maybe not how many people, I'm waiting to see how much longer is it going to take for more people, especially those in Congress, to start pushing back on all this money that's going out the door to Ukraine? I'm waiting to see. And I bring this up because they just sent another package, another one. How long is this going to continue? Let's go on. There's another point here that she mentions that I want to play as well.
And this is a problem, a legitimate problem that people have with things like Davos, where, and I've been watching some of their videos, their panels, the events they're having. I'm glad that you're able to see them. That's a good thing. We're going to be talking a little bit later about some other events and some other conversations that were going on in Davos. But yeah, there they are, the Western elites, the leaders of democratic countries, business leaders, celebrities are there. Idris Elba was there, and probably.
What's Idris Elba doing there?
Are you talking about how important it is to support Ukraine? No, I don't know. That's not what he was talking about. I think it was a climate change thing. But it's that kind of, Hollywood meets politicos, meets business. It's so elite and insidery, and decisions there are being made that the American people don't agree with.
Yeah.
That they're, fine.
Yep.
If you want to just sit, have panels,
And we have no voice. We have no voice. Why aren't they having these panels with the working class, with people from the working class, people who are poor? Why aren't they having this as like a town hall with people in these communities? We just have there's nothing, no voice.
Congratulate each other on how committed you are to Ukraine's defense. fine. But here in America, we still, at least in theory, our representatives are responsible to the people. They have to give the people the policies that the people want. And if half of Republicans, and I'm sure privately a lot of Democrats, probably the more progressive, the more left-leaning you are, probably the more working class, et cetera, you are, the more you're going to say, hey, wait a minute, why is this the top priority of our government, is spending significant proportions of our GDP on defending this country forever?
I got to say, like, I don't believe, I'm an MMT person. I don't think the funding is one-to-one. I don't think the fact that we're spending on Ukraine is the reason why we can't have social programs at home, et cetera. However, rhetorically, the fact that these progressives in Congress aren't exploiting this moment of significant frustration with investment in Ukraine when Americans are paying more than a minimum wage hour salary for a carton of eggs is such an enormous missed opportunity and something bordering on an own goal. I don't know what's going on there.
I know what's going on. They're following the lead of the Democratic Party leadership. They're following the leadership. This is something Cynthia McKinney has talked about oftentimes. When Democrat Party leadership tells you to do something, they're going to do it. You have to follow that leadership. Otherwise, they'll find ways to get rid of you, just like they did Dennis Kucinich. That's why he's not there. Look, let me tell you what they did to Dennis Kucinich. They decided to redraw his district so that he didn't have one. That's how far they'll go, just to get rid of you. But it is definitely a missed opportunity, because if I were there, I would point out this is a perfect time for Bernie Sanders and the squad members to say, hey, we have sent over $100 billion to Ukraine, but Joe Biden, you told us we can't afford to have Medicare for all. We've sent over $100 billion to Ukraine, but you keep telling us we can't have free pre-K and free public universities. We've sent over $100 billion to Ukraine, but you keep telling me we can't guarantee housing for everyone in this country. And I'm not talking about affordable housing. I'm talking about guaranteed housing, which means that everyone is guaranteed a home. That doesn't mean you have to be means tested, because when you means test it, it doesn't apply to everybody. All those squad members, Jamal Bowman, who likes to tweet these little videos on Twitter, has no problem attacking the obvious people on the right, the obvious phonies on the right. But he can't call out the phonies in the Democratic Party. When are they going to stand up and say these things? They're not going to, right? How long is this going to go on? Is it going to be a year from now and they're still sending billions and billions to Ukraine? Is this where we're headed? And no more people are going to call this out? Think about it. Think about it. That goes to all of them. And that goes to Ro Khanna too. Because Ro Khanna go on everybody's show, including he came on this show. But the next person who interviews him, they need to ask him that question. How long is this going to continue, Ro Khanna? Are you going to continue to support all these bills that are sending billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine, over $100 billion, and you continue to tell me you won't bring Medicare for all to the floor for a vote because you don't have the votes for it, because people say it's too expensive and you can't afford it, but you sending billions to this country? When are you going to call that out? And if you're not going to call it out, then why? What's in it for you to be silent? What's in it for you to go along? Is it a Senate seat? Is it a seat in the Oval Office? Why are you silent on this issue? Same thing with Pramila Jayapal. It's her bill. It's her and Bernie Sanders' bill. You're not going to call this out, Pramila? All this money going out the door? And you're going to continue to tell the people, well, we can't really afford it. And the President Joe Biden said we can't afford it. You think the American people are that stupid? Billions going out to them. Billions. They announced another one again, another aid package. Shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. Listen to this. This is ridiculous.
Well, Ned, CNN is now reporting that the United States, the Biden administration, is expected to announce one of the largest military aid packages to Ukraine yet. We're talking about another $2.5 billion aid package. It will include, for the first time, Stryker combat vehicles. But while a handful of Western allies want to provide battle tanks, the U.S. is not expected to provide them, at least not now. Tell us why. Why not?
Well, Wolf, on any forthcoming announcements, 2 words, stay tuned. As you know, we have...
This is the only part you really need to hear.
Well, Ned, CNN is now reporting that the United States, the Biden administration, is expected to announce one of the largest military aid packages to Ukraine yet. We're talking about another $2.5 billion.
$2.5 billion. So don't tell me that they can't afford to give us universal health care. All that money going out the door to them. Absolutely ridiculous. More people need to call this out, man. More people need to call this out. But the connection between the two is that you have these elite at the World Economic Forum. You also had some of those same elites at the Bilderberg meeting last year. They are making decisions for the world. And we have no say-so. And one of those decisions, which appeared to be on that panel, is that they are going to continue to support them and fund them as long as needed. You never see them have that passion for us, though, right? I'm going to fight for Medicare for all for the American people as long as needed. Never. That's right, Gyro. We never have a say, though. We never do. Why are we at these tables? Why are we even virtually, right? I'm not saying we all have to go to Switzerland, but we could meet them virtually. Why can't we sit in on some of these discussions? What is it that they don't want us to hear? Why can't we be a part of the conversation? That is the question that I'm asking. You should not have a handful of elite people making decisions for the 99%. And that is what is happening. Max Fiend said, my senator is there for some damn reason. LB says, when they send money to Ukraine, they're paying themselves. That's right. There you go. I'll take the comment on Rockfin. Thank you for the tip, Roger. Sabby, I don't care how many attendees are at the World Economic. I got to be careful with the language on here now, guys. Effers. Establishments like these will crumble when we start establishing worker cooperatives, chartering public banks, using all the tools we have, CBIs, general strikes, by any means necessary. 100%. Thank you so much for that. We've been speaking a lot about like war tonight and the effects that it's had on the economy, the effects that inflation has had on working class people, whether it's in the United States or the UK or France, as we talked about earlier. And I think it's really important for us to remember that, again, they are trying to prolong it. Again, war is profitable. So you have to keep that in mind. We've spoken a lot about war. I want you to remember what it's really about, that it's all about profit. There's profit in war. There's no profit in peace. And sometimes the goal isn't even to necessarily win. So we're going to ride out with that.
Yvonne. Because the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States, out of the tax bases of European countries, through Afghanistan and back into the hands of a transnational security elite. That is the goal, i.e. the goal is to have an endless war, not a successful war.